The image on the screen is an image that was created by one of our former artists in residence, David Rankin. He's got an exceptional gift, don't you think? He has entitled this image, Portals of Grace. And I was able to use it for a series on preaching earlier this year. I'm going to suggest that we also consider the next image that I'm going to put on the screen as well, a portal of grace. So, like, we've all seen Harry Potter, right? Portal, right? Doorway, right? Mystical, all of the above. So this is a portal of grace. And this, too, is intended to be a portal of grace. In those days, a decree went out from the Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. In that one sentence is all the information that you need to figure out what was going on in the world at that time for the community of Galilean peasants. It is a sentence that tells you about power, about empire, and about the greed that goes with it. In those days, the emperor, the Lord of the universe, and he was the Lord of that universe, sent out a decree because he was in control of every man, woman, and child, and field, and lake, and forest. He sent out an order that everyone was to be registered, and in being registered, they became another confirmed source of more wealth for the Lord, with the potential that their already very challenging lives were going to become more challenging. The writer of the Gospel of Luke wants to make it clear. Another story is about to unfold that comes with it a different kind of power and a different kind of possibility. And he's not pulling any punches. He wants us to see the world as it is. And so he begins by affirming that the world is dominated by men in high places who spend their days lining up resources for themselves. Some days they do that by invading other countries. Some days they do that by increasing the taxes on the poor. And other days they simply move in and take over lakes, rivers, fields fertile with fruit. In one sentence, he reminds us how the world works. Now, I know that you know where this is all going. Fast forward, and it is 2016, and the person commonly known as the leader of the free world has just, among other things, tweeted that it's time to start expanding America's nuclear arsenal, and in about 140 characters, that's tweet speak, has declared that he is prepared to completely ignore and override the work of peace and diplomacy done by thousands over the last decades to reduce the risk of nuclear annihilation. And while it is true that we don't exactly know what that means, what that will look like, we do know that we are listening with horror as these edicts are declared, and at the same time trying to remember how to breathe. So Luke's story is beginning to sound eerily familiar. And that is what Luke wants you to remember, that when the new story breaks in, things on the ground were particularly bad. So let's move through that story. Let's think for a moment about the angels. The angels in biblical mythology are a sign that it is time for a new story. It is the story, this time around, of the birth of a child. And this is where we're going to have to just kind of have a little aside here and make some decisions, some good theological decisions. The Church of Christendom turned this child into a king, an emperor who from time to time within the mind of the church exercised some really despotic power, because that's what kings did. And so the Church of Christendom created a Jesus from time to time who looked over our shoulders, who was very disapproving, especially if we were having fun, who you would never want at your party, and that would not like you very much if you were bad. And I'm not making this stuff up because I have to listen to the stories of recovering from that tradition all the time. So we've got to push the rewind button. We've got to get back to the original story and ask ourselves, what was the writer's intention? The writer was setting the story for the tale of two kingdoms. That is clear. There is the kingdom of this world. Pick a leader. The Emperor Augustus, Henry VIII, Hitler, Donald Trump. And the writer is really clear about how that kingdom functions. By and large, there is an abuse of power and a plethora of greed. And the story that unfolds against that backdrop, the story we tell every year at this time, is meant to be a portal to another kingdom. And let me outline for you what I think is essential to our understanding of this portal. First, this portal, this doorway to another kingdom, is here on earth. Second, key to this portal is courage. Don't be afraid. Say the angels, remember that line. If you forget everything else I say tonight, remember that line. Third, Jesus, his teachings, the way he walked on the earth, his vision for inclusion and welcome even of the enemy, provides the template for this alternative kingdom, which functions very different than does the kingdom of the Emperor Augustus. So tonight is about an ancient invitation to live out of another kind of story. And against all of my poetic inclinations, let's look at the toolbox that we need if we are on a daily basis going to get beyond our fear and despair about what is going on in the world. And I haven't even begun to name statistics on rising existence of mental health and addiction and loneliness, and you add your own list. It may be that this toolbox is filled with practices that are in fact very simple and down to earth. It may be that Wendell Berry, in his poem The Wild Goose, is right when he says, we have what we need here. And so these things that we need in order to live out of this alternative story may include, but are not limited to, a community. A circle of friends where you will feel both safe and challenged. A greater